Hey now, today I'm going to be brewing an American wheat ale. This is a take on the American wheat that's quite a bit hoppier in flavor and aroma. This is based on a beer that a buddy and I had 4 or 5 years ago. It was Banded Peaks Plainsbreaker, and it was a hoppy wheat ale is how they were marketing it. We drank it, we thought it was awesome, came up with our own version of the recipe, and we actually like it quite a bit more. So essentially what we're looking at for this is kind of like a light, easy drinking beer, but it's got a little splash of crystal malt in there to give it a little bit of body and extra flavor. And then it's all late hopping, and it's a combination of Falconer's Flight and Mosaic hops. And that just gives a really well-rounded, like kind of citrus, floral, tropical fruit kind of flavor thing going on. And without too terribly high bitterness. It's around like 23 IBUs or something like that. So anyway, just starting off here, we've got the grain. For this, I'm doing a 10-gallon batch, and so the base for this is Rahr's 2-row malt. I've got a whole bunch of OIO wheat malt in there. It's 33% of the grist. We've got 3% of the grist is Crystal 40, and 1.5% is Cara Red, kind of like a C20-ish sort of thing. So anyway, I'm just going to get this all milled up here, and this is going to be using my Monster Mill 3mm Pro. If you want to check out my walkthrough video on that, you can. For now, let's get her going. Okay, there we go, all nicely crushed. Took, I don't know, maybe a few minutes for the mill to crush through about, it was just about 9 kilograms here. We're shooting for a 5% beer, somewhere right around that for this one here. And now at this point, I'm just waiting for the brew stand here just to heat up to where we need for mashing in. All right, we've hit our strike temp here. I'm going to be mashing at 151 Fahrenheit or 66.1 Celsius. And I just have overshot that a couple of degrees. I'm also going with a 4 liters per kilogram ratio here. Normally I go 3 to 1, but just because I've got that higher percentage of wheat malt in here, I wanted to thin it out a little bit and whatnot prior to doing that. Oh, I also forgot to add there. I was going to put in, well, actually I just put in just under a tablespoon of pH stabilizer too, just because of the water profile that we have here. And this is a lighter beer, so that'll really kind of help out with that. So I'm just getting this mixed up, and as you can see, like it's a pretty thin mash. But then that helps me avoid having to use anything like rice hulls or whatever for these higher wheat malt grists. All right, so I'm just going to get my lid back on here and begin to recirculate. And we'll see how long it takes to hit the mash temp. Well, there we go. Nice little kind of recirculation kind of starting there. You can see how cloudy everything is here right off the bat. I'm about 1 degree Celsius below my mash temp. It's just been going here for about 30 seconds, so it won't take very long. Maybe another, by the looks of this, maybe 45 seconds it will hit mash temp. So yeah, awesome. I'm going to give it an hour mash time, and then we'll be on to the next step. Well, we're like 16 minutes in to the mash. You can see that a good amount of that starch conversion is taking place. Still hazy, of course, with the proteins and whatnot from that wheat, but way more clear than it was before. So we've had our 1 hour mash. You can see that's definitely a lot clearer than it was before. Things are looking awesome in here. So now I'm just going to increase my mash temp here up to mash out. So I'm going to go with like 75 Celsius or so. And we're going to let it sit there for probably a solid 15 minutes. Alright, so I'm just going to start to actually mash out here. So I'm just going to turn off my pumps and then quickly get this over into the boil kettle. Just going to put my lock line down there so it's right along the bottom. And pop out my Thermowell. And get my cup over here. So now I can just turn on the HLT pump. And that will now go up into there. I'm going to fill it up just a little bit, get a little bit of extra wort going in there, and then I'll start to run off into the boil kettle. And there you can see now I've started to run the wort off into the boil kettle. So we're collecting, I'll have to just double check my numbers, I think it's around 49 liters or so pre-boil. And once I have this just a little bit more wort in here, I'm gonna fire up the burner. And, woo, flame on. So I've got over 15 liters of wort in here now, so it's a good time to start actually working towards heating that up. So I'm gonna collect 49 liters pre-boil. And it's an hour-long boil. The first hops aren't going in until 20 minutes left in the boil. So once this hits a boil, I've got lots of time to get those squared away. Well, there we go. We hit a boil. So yeah, I'm gonna set the timer for 60 minutes, and then also go and measure out my hops so that we're ready for that first edition. All right, here. So we're coming up on 20 minutes remaining on the boil, and I've got 12 grams each of Falconer's Flight and Mosaic. It's the first hops to go in. And second hop edition, so this one's 14 grams each of, again, Falconer's Flight and Mosaic. Yeah, so those hops went in at 10 minutes, and then also here at 10 minutes, I'm just adding, it's basically 2 cups of wort that I had pulled and cooled down, and then added Supermoss too. I mean, this is a wheat beer, so it's not like it's going to be necessarily super clear anyway, but force of habit, I guess. And at 5 minutes left here, I've got 15 grams of each of these here. Tossing those in. The end is coming. All right, so we just flamed out. Okay, kiddo, are you gonna pour those in? Okay, we're a little foggy here, but yeah. So that was 28 grams each of Falconer's Flight and Mosaic, and now I'm just going to give this a really quick whirlpool, and that will help create a really nice cone in that bottom there with all these hops. Wow, it's super foggy, super steamy. Yeah, and then that will make running off a lot easier. Alright, so I got my plate chiller hooked up, and that's been pumping for a little bit, and then I just started to run off here. I now have the awkward moment of realizing that the only 2 carboys I had left are 2 different sizes and shapes, but I'm going to run off right around 5 gallons into each of them, just kind of split it that way, and yeah, we'll take a peek when she's done. Alright, there we go. So it's time to get these guys downstairs, get the heat wraps on them, get them warming up to pitching temperature, and clean up the old boil kettle. Okay, well, measuring below the meniscus, we're looking at 1049 for an OG. I was aiming for 1050, so I'm obviously terribly upset about that. Anyway, we've got these hooked up to a temperature controller, or a couple temperature controllers with some heat wraps here, and I'm just waiting for them to get up around 66 or 67 Fahrenheit, because I want to ferment at 67, so probably time to rehydrate some yeast. Okay, so we're ready to pitch yeast. I aerated these, and I just did that by leaning the carboys like this and swirling them like that for about 1.5 minutes each. It's a 1049 original gravity, so we're not super worried about getting a ton of oxygen in there. I'm pitching here rehydrated packs of US-05, which was just, they were just rehydrated in some sterilized water. So I've got my funnel all nicely sanitized here. Do number 1. Then I'll just repeat with the second one here. And then I'll get these guys set up with some carboy hoods and blow-off tubes. Alright, so there we are. We got our carboy hoods on, thermal wells, temperature probes, heat wraps, everything like that. And these guys are heading towards fermentation. So just over 24 hours later, we are fermenting away happily. I pitched at 66 Fahrenheit and let it rise to 67 overnight. And then now that it's hit high Krausen here, we've got it at 68 Fahrenheit. And yeah, it's looking pretty sweet. So fermentation has basically completely died off here. After that initial ferment temp of 67 and then moving to 68 the next day, I wound up taking it up to 70 just to kind of wrap up fermentation, starting about day 4 or 5, and then held it there just to ensure that we hit terminal gravity in a decent amount of time. And yeah, so it has a finishing gravity of 1.011. which is fantastic. I have these off the heat right now. The wraps are still on there, but they're unplugged. So I'm just going to let this kind of crash out just a little bit before transferring to a keg. All right, it is the moment of truth. So after I had those the carboys off the heat there, and some of these flocculated, I then pressure racked into a couple of kegs. I had those in the keezer just to kind of crash roll, drop a bunch of the yeast out. I didn't bother to gelatin fine like I normally do with my beers because it's a wheat beer and it's not going to get super clear anyway, so that's totally fine. Then after a week or so, I transferred it using a shortened dip tube into another sanitized keg and force carbonated. If you want to see my videos on how I like to do all of those, they're all in the brewing playlist in my channel. You can check that out. But for now, it is time to go ahead and actually test this out. Well, I figured a beer like this is probably best tested and enjoyed outside in 27 degrees Celsius. So here we go. The aroma of it is super like tropical, floral, citrusy, which makes obvious sense based on the hops that we were using and all that late hopping that we did. In the malt profile here, for sure, it's got that like soft, tangy wheat character, which is really kind of the dominant grain flavor or malt flavor that we've got. And then just the perfect amount of bitterness, I think, to make this super drinkable. That crystal malt, which was a really low percentage, just kind of gave it a nice color here, just slightly darkening it towards gold. And then obviously tons of hop flavor, right? And again, it's that tropical citrus kind of floral blend with the Falconer's Flight and the Mosaic hops. So I'm super happy. It's extremely drinkable, very refreshing beer, perfect for summer. So yeah, if you like this, check out other brewing videos that I have coming down the pipe here all the time. And yeah, until next time, keep it at 11.